Good morning, everybody. My name is Mark Fetterman. I'm from Canada. And my focus now is very different than it was 15 years ago when I was collaborating with Derek de Kerkhove at the McLuhan program at the University of Toronto. At a time when I came up with this crazy idea that we're no longer private, that now we live also in public, and created this reversal idea called Publicy. Right now, my work is focused on organizations, formal organizations, informal organizations, crazy movements that pop up and then disappear, and leadership, organization culture. So I work on the transformation of organization culture from the old industrial age model to something that's more contemporary. Contemporary leadership being about creating collaborative environments where people come together, share experiences, and out of those shared experiences, an alternate future becomes possible. Because if you don't need an alternate future, you don't need a leader. You only need a good manager, which is what we used to have, but now we need leaders. One of those alternate futures is indeed the post-city that we'll be talking about today. So imagine you're in the post-city and you meet somebody for coffee, you're out on a date, you have a job interview, you meet a clerk in the shop. And on your implanted device, because by then we'll all have implants on our retinas, immediately all the information that is known about that person among a variety of databases pops up. And we now are in the world of experiencing publicy. We're no longer the private person. Publicy is not about transparency. I apologize to my friend who focuses on transparency. It's about translucency. So we can sort of see through, but not exactly. Okay? So the idea is we get this image of people based on the information that is shared. And in this information that's shared, our identity is transformed. It is co-created. So part of the identity is created by how I show up, who I am, how I relate to people, what I look like. Part of that identity is created collaboratively with my social network. So I put things out on Facebook, on Twitter, I put things out on Instagram and YouTube and all sorts of other things. And people who follow me or connect with me will come up with their own idea of who I am. And it's a funny situation that I have. When I meet people in my professional life, they have this very interesting idea of me, and then when they see me on the street dancing salsa, because I organize an outdoor salsa party every week in Toronto, downtown Toronto, they say, is this the same guy who was the professor? Conversely, when I'm the professor in the class, one of my students said, didn't I see you dancing at the social? How can my professor be dancing, right? So there's this disconnect. People create meaning about me, and that's part of the identity that we co-create. The final aspect is much more nefarious. It is about the big data simulacrum, the simulation of me that's projected algorithmically out of databases over which who knows who has control, right? WikiLeaks, Edward Snowden, even the Ashley Madison incident talks about things that are created about me. And we absolutely don't know what this simulation is until we bump into it when we're trying to cross a border, for example, or when a human resources department does a search, pulls out something about my shopping habits, or perhaps worse. The way this works is that when I show up, my personal thing, you see who I am. This is who I project. I have full control over that identity that is created. In my social network, it's a little bit cartoonish, but I have mostly control of what I put out, but the meaning is very different. And so it's a cartoon projection of who I am. That big data simulacrum that is created algorithmically, well, that's something out of science fiction. It's a dystopia. It's something that is created that may be part of me, may not be part of me. And the problem with big data is that the signal-to-noise ratio is really, really low. In other words, you create correlations that project meaning. But there are so many spurious correlations that are created in big data, and we have no way of knowing which one is right and which one is problematic. And I have absolutely no control over that identity. So when I meet myself, it almost seems like a Where's Waldo convention. Each one of these images is part of me. of my identity. They all look different, but they all look similar. So that's a bit too confusing. Let's sort of bring it back down. If I'm meeting myself and I'm seeing myself through my Google glasses, right? So it's this, who is this person? Publicy allows us to ask some specific questions. Number one, how do I know my multi-self? How do I gain knowledge of who I am in this post-city world? How do we protect ourselves and our identity from the effects of this really convenient technology, really beneficial technology? When I landed in Linz, I immediately turned on the net and I had the Google map. I knew how to get from the train station to my hotel. I could find my way to the salsa party last night that was happening at Remember, which was so much fun. So this is so convenient technology, but now Google knows where I was, where I am, what I'm doing, what I've purchased, right? And so how do I protect myself against the effects of this technology that creates me as a commodity, that somehow dehumanizes and objectifies myself? You put these together, and we ask the very key question, how do we construct a critical pedagogy of the contemporary self? In other words, how do we create learning and knowledge about the relationships of power, about how we control our identity, keeping attention with all of those companies, organizations, governments, political parties that want to take that from me? How to create this critical pedagogy? To put it in very basic terms, if I was to meet myself in a dark cyber alley, would I like the person I meet? And indeed, would I even recognize the person I meet? These are the conversations of Publicy.